Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the final episode of the Rendezvous of the split. I'm not sure how well the tilting of this is going to be. Y'all are technically like 10 degrees that way, but I'm going to even it out in post-editing. We'll see how it goes. Regardless, since the last time that we talked, Team Liquid and FlyQuest are going to MSI. 100 Thieves literally only lost to the champions of the split, and I would argue we played them the best out of any team in the league, so I'm happy with it. But I want to use this final episode to wrap everything up and also go over grading for each individual player, because I'm assuming that this roster is going to stay exactly the same as it was at the start of the year through the end. So let's go over a progress report, a midterm grade of where each individual player is. Now, it is important to establish two things up front. First, my rankings are not going to be indicative of what the players around the LCS think, what general consensus is, simply because, one, I'm only grading them based on the things that we've seen on stage. I'm not taking any scrim rumors or anything that we can't physically see, that I haven't seen with my own eyes. None of that matters. It is purely what we've seen on stage, which isn't a lot of games. And second, I'm not really gonna look at the stats. I looked at them for All Pro. They're a little bit messy in most roles. There are some times where it might come in handy and I might put something on screen, but for the most part, I'm gonna remain as is. Starting with the Menace in the top lane, Sniper. Do I really have to say anything? A. Easy A, like not even a question in my mind. Did he start off, oh my God, there's a couple walking by that just got married. Did he start off a little bit iffy at the beginning of the split? Absolutely. Week one for him was not pretty. Despite picking up the win against Team Liquid, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that it was great, but his laning stats got better each and every week as the year went on. You look at his expectations and what he was coming in at, and most people just assumed that he was going to be the worst player in the league, which was fair. He's an academy player coming up. When you compared him to Fate God was getting the better of him in academy, so there was no reason to assume that he would reach the peaks that he did. But he overperformed expectations heavily. People will look to playoffs and say, okay, well, he didn't perform in playoffs in the same way that he did in the regular season. I would actually say that he did. He definitely started off a little rough in that first series against Cloud9, was not great, got gapped by Budge the entire time. Comes back against Dokla, starts performing a little bit better, and then in the Team Liquid series, even though we lost it 3-1, you could see his clear progression throughout those games and getting more comfortable on stage, getting kills on impact in that series despite the loss. He has room to grow, obviously. I'm not saying any player on this list, I'm not saying anybody was perfect on 100 Thieves to split. They weren't. But going into next split, his laning is already improving. So I'm not gonna sit here and say he needs to get better in lane, because he is getting better. His team fighting is already pretty good. He's putting himself in decent positions. He's got caught out a few times, but overall can't really complain. And when you listen to the 100 Thieves comm videos, it becomes even clearer that he has a very vocal role in this team. So I want to see that continue. I want to see that develop. I don't want to say that he should become a leader because he's only in the second split, but I want to see him diversify his champ pool. And assuming these rumors of him being bad in scrims are true, then sure. He needs to work on being more consistent, both on stage and off stage, and delivering that same intensity and that same level of focus there. But for his first ever split in the LCS at 17 years old, what are you gonna say about the guy? He crushed it. For River, I'm actually gonna go with a B, which I know will make some people mad, specifically anybody that was affiliated with Golden Guardians and is going to look at this and say he's still not getting the flowers that he was due. River played incredible. He facilitated lane ganks consistently. He was helping in team fights, being very proactive alongside Quid. I'm not taking anything away from the guy. His Vi got permabanned throughout playoffs. Like, teams simply would not let us have him. His depth of champion pool was one of our biggest assets that we had this entire split alongside Quid's. But the thing that I noticed with him is the same thing that I did worry about when it came to Golden Guardians, was there was this kind of fall off at the end of the year, where at the beginning of the year, it felt like River was like really stepping up, which is a byproduct of having rookies on the team around him. He's gonna look great, but then as those players grew, the gap kind of closed a little bit. And when you went to playoffs, it didn't feel like River had the same level of impact as he did during the regular season, during best of one. I'm not a jungler. I'm not gonna sit here and try and say that I know how to become more consistent as a jungler. Maybe that is very reliant upon your lanes, but at least on the stage games that we saw, we were getting advantages in mid. We were getting advantages in top lane, and bot lane was holding on. So I'll say B. I want to see him keep up the form that he had at the beginning of the year in some of these highlight moments for River, but I want to see him do that throughout playoffs as well. We got our first taste of best of 5 experience for many players on this team, but he's one of our veterans. You expect him to step up to a level above what everybody else is on the team, given his experience and given his resume. But overall, can you really complain when he was top 3, tied for MVP of the split? I don't necessarily agree with 200 Thieves players being in the top 3 of that final vote, but at the end of the day, River came in with very high expectations to be the best player on this team, and he walks out weirdly enough not being the best player on the team, which is good. I'm glad somebody else stepped up and was at that level. But something Reaper said back whenever he took over the team in 2021 still sticks with me, in that I want each individual player to basically be fighting as if they want to be the best player on the team, while obviously helping everybody else out as well. The goal should be for all 5 players to be in the argument for All-Pro, and he was already All-Pro, so like I ain't gonna take anything away from that, but that is a regular season award. And during the playoffs, we weren't the same as we were in the regular season. So, consistency. Quid, he's our MVP of the league. A+. If there was a champion that you thought that he could play that would nullify somebody else, he'd play it. His pool was very wide. He consistently was getting better week over week as the split went on during the regular season. We'll talk about playoffs here in a minute. And again, when you look at expectations versus where he ended the split, there is nobody that grew more in the entire league than Quid. Precedent then going into next split is going to be a lot higher, and the pressure is going to be higher than it was now, which is my main concern for Quid. Despite the A+ in spring, because I think it'd be unfair to give him anything but A+, you do have to worry about how he's going to close summer. Playoffs were definitely more rough for Quid than they were any other player on our team. In terms of the kind of coming back down to reality, that series against Jojo Pune wasn't exactly amazing. APA was notably going even with him whenever during the regular season he gapped APA every single time. You can tell, even though he overcame the stage nerves during best of ones in the regular season, when the pressure got dialed up later on, the nerves were still a little bit there. And that's not something that you can really work on in the off season. You can prepare yourself to be better in that moment and be at that same level that you were in the regular season, if not better. But you can't emulate the nerves that will happen when we make playoffs next split, assuming we make playoffs. I don't want to jinx anything. And that high octane, high intensity comes back. It's like, okay, well, same thing with everybody else. Like, you can do great on your homeworks, you can do great on your essays, but when your final exam is worth 20% of your grade, it means a lot. Can't rely on everything else to carry you in the very end if you want to be valedictorian, if you want to be the best mid laner in the league, undisputed, hands down, and not be called frauds like we got labeled. We need to see that delivered in playoffs next split. I'm gonna lump bot lane together because it feels like the most appropriate thing to do, and I'm gonna say C+. The one stat that myself and many others will point out to you is that Meech had the highest DPM of any player in the entire league. He was pumping out damage when he was able to get to that point, but we got abused in bot lane so many times throughout the split, and especially in playoffs where it's like we got gapped. We were not able to hold on. We were not able to just solidify things so that either Sniper or Quid could take over the game, or even pump out that heavy damage that we were dealing later in the year. Later in the year, later in the game. This is a duo where I see a lot of upside, more upside than anybody else on the team for obvious reasons. They performed technically the worst out of the 5 players on our squad. They have the most room to grow. But if we want to stand a chance against Team Liquid, against Cloud9, against FlyQuest, against any of these teams that might potentially make upgrades as we head into summer split, you gotta be able to win these lanes. Meech, unfortunately, is not Danny. He is not gonna be this player, at least yet, that can mechanically outplay everything once you get to a certain point. He will literally just take over the game and win it for you. We put him on champions like Aphelios in the postseason, and it did not work out for us. His positioning was not picture perfect like Danny's would be. And I know that might be an unfair comparison, but like that's the ADC that like came into the league and was dealing those damage numbers. And like I see a lot of similarities between these two where there is that weak laning transitioning into monster and team fights. But when the pressure came on, we didn't have that level of, I don't know, firepower. And we were also further behind what Danny ever was on EG. So I need to see them step up in lane, learn the early game matchups. If you're gonna play late game, if you're gonna play these scaling champions like a Lulu, Aphelios, you need to be able to go even or just slightly behind in these lanes and not just lose it by 20, 30 CS and then Berserker takes over the game, and what do you know, by 20 minutes you stand no chance. So final midterm report cards of where we're at, pretty solid. 4th place. I feel like this season deserves a proper outro, and that is for me to say thank you to everybody. As much fun as it is for me to make this content and put it out there, to bring 100 Thieves fans together, to just try and make the most of what I believe is an incredible esport, an incredible team, and just a moment for people to come together and enjoy fandom. I wouldn't be able to do some of the things I do without you all. I've seen the support on Twitter, I've seen it on Reddit, I've seen it everywhere. I have my good days and my bad days just like everybody else, and you have no idea how uplifting some of that stuff is. I'm blessed to be in the position that I am. I'm thankful that every single one of you supports me in my journey to get there. And I mean, look at this. I'm in the greatest goddamn city in the world, and there are so many more people out here that don't even know what 100 Thieves is, that don't even know what League of Legends is. If you think that we are done anytime soon, you are out of your damn mind. As sad as I am for the season to end, I'm just beyond excited for it to all kick off again in just a few months. I hope one day I can give back to you all in the same way that you have given to me. But until that point, have a great day, have a great off season, and I'll catch you for summer split.